one of our listeners, the Holly Balls, commented and brought to our attention the incredible story of Mapsco. So I went in and I did a look around and felt like it'd be a great segment to cover. These are street atlases.
Okay.
Rand McNally style.
Rand McNally style. You could beat somebody to death with these. Put it that way. I'm sure it's happened somewhere in Texas. So my story is today, my unbelievable story is titled Mapsco and the Texas Map Wars. 1948 America, Deep South, Texas. A man named Milton Boyd Keith, a florist, found that his delivery drivers, kept getting lost in the Dallas streets. It was very different than like the East Coast cities, which were like New York, blocked. If you're going north, if you're going west, you know what's going on because the numbers are changing. The street counts are going just gridlocked, right? In Texas, it was just no holds barred, right? Like, you know, it might be going left, then right, then up and down. Like you didn't know where you were. And so Milton's like, for the sake of my company, for the florist shop, like I need to be helping my drivers be better prepared. And so he starts to like write directions down, starts to log what's going on in the city of Dallas, so that his drivers could just be more efficient with their time and hit their deliveries. All right. This is 1948. 1951, he's like, starts to pester the actual city of Dallas, like, hey, you need to give me all your maps. I'm sure he went in with a pistol. Like, hey, you need to give me all your maps. That's deep south.
He probably took him some roses. You know?
That's probably more accurate.
Maybe some chocolates.
Milton goes in, he asks all the city guys, all the city planners and all the city like architect guys, they just knew where everything was by heart. So they never felt like it was required or helpful to like publish anything that would help.
Well,
them.
of course they don't need it.
But they also didn't have flowers to deliver, so they didn't really care. So he gets all these maps from the city and starts to essentially index them with the help of Lily Kendrick, who was his shop manager who worked in the store. And remember her name because she's going to come back in a little while. She had a knack for organization and for cartography and just understanding how maps work. And so she started to help him put all the maps essentially into an index format that he could just give to his drivers and they could just look up street addresses, streets in general, and neighborhoods.
For all you youngsters out there listening, I know we were on the cusp of like getting GPS and stuff on our phones, but they were paper maps. And this is well before, you know, they were widespread.
You've heard of a phone book. It's similar to that. You had to read. It was crazy.
I love that about the phone book because that's exactly what I had to do thinking about this. I mean, this is the 50s America. Obviously, people were starting to move around with cars. Cars were, 30 years old at this point. And so America was becoming more of a country on wheels. And so traveling fast was possible. So essentially he started in 1952. He published it. It was only for his drivers. He was not sharing it. Yeah, he was not sharing it.
Steve Jobs of maps.
Exactly. And so they weren't available to the public. They tried to go to Houston with it to have like 2 maps. And apparently Houston's just different enough of a climate that the glue that they were using in the books just like disintegrated and like they just like fall apart.
So Flex Seal, man.
Yeah. They didn't publish in Houston again until like decades later. Like Milton was pissed at Houston.
Missed that market.
Yeah. It's like, you guys are really digging into my profits here. So in 1956, sales were kind of slow until the city of Dallas bought a bunch of maps for their fire and ambulance services. So that's when things started to like pick up. It was a big order. It still wasn't available to the public, but other florists, it's so funny that this is all because of flowers, but other florists essentially said, hey, we'll start buying maps from you too. Yeah. And so he turned it into a business to business company. So he wasn't actually just like straight to consumers. Like they were really good at the time because they like actually modeled off of Roman military strategies, which was what we've know today is like you can look up the back, you can look up a street name in like this giant appendix, and then it gives you the page number that street is on. And then when you get to the page, there's a grid with a number or a letter in each of the grids. So that's how you find. Back then, you couldn't just type it in, it goes right to it.
Battleship style.
Yeah. Battleship style.
I go to my honey's house, I got to hit the D7s.
So that was how they did it. Finally, 1956, the maps were available to the public. And this is where Milton, he hired homeless people from the streets of Dallas to be the salespeople.
Oh, okay. Cartographers, like, you know this mile-and-a-half area better than anyone.
You walk these streets.
Yeah.
I walk these streets
Like street
with
ushers.
the 6-string on my back. Play for keeps. And they're like, that guy is a great map salesman right there. So anyway, he started, it was cool because it gave people jobs, but it was also like this deal where it was just, he would just give them to the person, and if they went out and never came back, he was only out like three books, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if they sold them, came back with the money and did the split and wanted more books, he would give them more. So it was totally,
Thinking.
it was like American commerce, like whatever you wanted to be in life. I didn't expect to be a map salesman, but I became the best damn map salesman in Dallas.
I want to see if those people are still around. Like, how'd you get started? Well, I was just, shitting about a trash can one day, and some man came up with some map books, and he said, "You sell these and come back, we'll split the profits." And now I live in this mansion. Like,
and apparently by like the late 1950s, it became a big status symbol to have a Mapsco map because they were so detailed, they were so good, they were so well published, and it was hard to get one. And so actually just knowing where you were going was like, you're more informed, you're more educated, and you're wealthier. As I can just picture people like, oh man, old Chip, he always knows where he's going in life. Good old Chip. Him and his Mapsco map.
if I had a Mapsco map, I'd be successful.
Because this is where it gets dicey, right? This is the Dallas Map Wars. This is where we hit it right here, all right? Milton dies in 1957, and he leaves the map company to his wife. His widow hires their nephew to take over the map business. What does he do right out of the gate? Renames and rebrands everything.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if it was pride or what, but he just goes, I can do better than that. So he names his maps Low Cadets.
What?
Excuse you?
It's literally spelled LO-KAT-IT. That was the name of the map.
Located.
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 It's like
Okay.
locate.
Go-
Yeah, okay,
yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
you got
locate.
me there.
Yeah,
It's
that's
like
what
explaining your joke at the bar
Yeah.
after no one got it.
this is like one of those examples in life where you get something that's really cool, and instead of just milking it for what it is, you're like, I'm gonna put my own spin on this and just completely botch it. So soon Milton's widow dies. I think that the nephew might have had something to do with this. He thought he was going to be the map tycoon of America. And so he's like, the only thing standing between me and 100% of the profits is my aunt. She's buried off the beaten trail in an unmarked grave. There's just like this hole in the map where it's just like nothing exists.
What about this spot right here? Yeah, go to that spot right there.
There's nothing over there.
Mary's Field. Why is it called Mary's Field? I don't know. I never knew anybody named Mary.
Wasn't your aunt named Mary?
No, her name was Mrs. Milton.
Oh, right.
So anyway, Lily Kendrick, here she comes. She had been with Milton the whole time working on the maps. She goes out and starts her own rival map company just in the face of his nephew, of Milton's nephew. And she starts with her son Choice. They called it Handy Map, and it became a map war between Locadits, which just I couldn't see them winning this fight at all. And Handy Maps, apparently the nephew was kind of a lazy bum because he never really changed anything. He never updated the maps. But Lily and her son Choice, they made the right choice, and they kept updating their maps and making them better. So the Handy Map just clearly outpaced Locadits. Essentially, what happened was Milton's nephew finally gave up. He threw in the towel. Lily buys from the adopted son of Milton the Mapsco brand, hires him at the new company, and she probably hired him and then said, hey, why don't you also just bring that brand over here?
Yeah.
She becomes one of the first female presidents of a company in Dallas's history. So let's mark it.
This is for the ladies, right?
This is for the ladies. This turning, all for Lily, man. She was smart. She was a smart lady. And I think that's the theme and the moral of the story for me is like the American commerce is like, if you really can see the opportunity and then you do your due diligence and you're strategic, because this is the 1950s. This is before all the big high flying fanatics of Wall Street and all that stuff. Like this was out in the middle of Texas, but a lady just doing great business. So her and Choice, they really get things set up. Mapsco is going out as the Handy Maps, and they take over finally they just get rid of all the business, all the competition. They buy Jiffy Maps, which was in Dallas, and they become the premier East Texas. She's the queen of the East Texas maps market.
Then they got into peanut butter. And that's just all from there, man.
And then just to rifle through it, Mapsco grows. She grows it up. She retires in 1965. Choice and his wife, they take over. The company grows even bigger. And by the 1970s, with the energy crisis that happened, I guess all the gas companies were just handing out free maps, but when they had to tighten their belt buckles and stop printing maps, that's when Mapsco like took another jump. So they're growing, they're outgrowing their facility. They finally had to stop printing maps in the back of the florist shop. Finally, 20 years later.
That's crazy to believe. Like, they started as a florist company, and then they're printing maps. I didn't realize that they were printing them in the back of the shop.
Yeah,
but that's
the
crazy.
whole time printing them in the back of the shop. But it just goes to show that one innovation can lead to so much more. 1981 was when they finally reverted the Handy Maps back to the Mapsco brand, and from then on, it was Mapsco. 750 adjustments were made a year to these maps, so annually they were getting updated, which is just a ton of adjustments. By the peak of it, 18,000 pages were in these books.
Okay, that's a light read.
Yeah, it's a light read.
I just need to go to the grocery store. Holy hell.
The books were selling out frequently. They had to upscale into a bigger map shop and finally had their headquarters. And then in like the late 80s, the Dallas Police Department reported that the most common stolen item from unlocked cars in Dallas were the Mapsco street atlas.
It's worth its weight in gold, probably.
I guess. And that was a lot of 18,000 pages. Like, that's a lot of weight.
Yeah.
1984, Mapsco does the Louisville Streets Atlas. 1983, Mapsco does Austin Street Atlas. And then through the late 90s, Denver, Colorado Springs, Fort Collins, and then the Ellis and Johnson counties. They were all in circulation. So they just start picking up towns in the Southwest. So where they ended up in the 90s and then the late 90s, multi-million-dollar project to convert all their maps to digital. And they started putting them on CDs.
What?
Yeah, so they were essentially just putting like all these 18,000 pages onto a CD, which was funny because back then you'd have to like boot up your computer over 5 minutes.
Yeah.
You'd have to type in what you wanted, get the address, probably write it down because you didn't have a computer in your
So
car.
you like put your Dell in your passenger seat and you're just like, hold on, Karen, I'm looking it up.
Yeah, if you're lucky. What I remember is, either you print out your directions or you write them down. Yeah, MapQuest them and write them down, print them out. I think we might be a little more directional savvy than the newer generation. But I mean, probably the generation before us is even more so just directional savvy. But it's like we were talking the other time. It's like if I'm going somewhere and I'm using a map, I try to, in my mind, get key points. Like, okay, that's checkpoint. It's like there's the gas station with the balloons or something like that. Stuff like that. And,
my dad's a FedEx driver. You guys know this. My whole life he's been a FedEx driver, and he just refuses to do the automated stuff. Like now they're so high tech, the little handheld thing is like, go to this address. And he's like, he literally told me one time he mapped it out and he showed that he could have hit all these stops sequentially just by memory of knowing his route in his area and been boom, 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 take 45 minutes, an hour. And the way that the automated thing had him going, it was like a weird triangle, pentagram thing, and it wasted. It was just like
you're summoning Satan. That's their big plan.
My dad just saved the world because he just didn't complete a FedEx pentagram route.
GPS is for the devil.
So just to wrap it all up, this is the death of Mapsco. This is the final chapter. This is when you filter through page 18,000 and you get to the brief history of Mapsco, and it's another 120 pages. It ends with this. In the 90s, it was their last big kind of year. They were still selling the physical books. They started selling the CDs. It started to get really exciting. And then they were quiet for the first 10 years of the 2000s when the internet started to take over and computers really started to make it. All of a sudden you have a map in your hand on a little device because of Steve Jobs. And essentially in 2010, they were acquired by this Kappa Media Group, which owned a bunch of other map companies. And they basically shut down all the physical production of Mapsco. All the offices were closed in 2010. And just as recent as 2022, the guy, the head guy at the Kappa Media Group, he just up and quits. Like he just was like, I'm out of here. I'm done. I'm going to take another job. And that essentially, like, there's nobody to take their place, and there's nobody to like champion, like, not only just like maybe what happens when an EMP hits the United States, but maybe what is like one of the most significant like cartography efforts of the Southwest of America. So like they just stopped in 2022, just last year. It was just like gone. And so all of the history, all of the Mapsco information, thankfully they donated to, I think, the University of Texas.
For burning material.
Yeah. Just all the archival stuff.
Yeah.
But as far as it goes, it's a museum piece now. Like a Mapsco, like original print, you could probably just put it in a museum.
That's crazy.
You can't sell it. There's no rights to it. Nobody's active anymore. And it's it.
Dude, he should have held out, man. Like, think about it. Could you imagine, like, a couple more years, man, when we get when the nuke hits us or whatever, and we lose all our phones? You know how pretty he'd be sitting in his giant office space. You're like, yes. Now everyone has to turn to me for locations.
What do you have to offer?
Sitting in his Mapsco throne.
Just every brand of map.
Oh, you want one of my maps?
20 gallons of water, 30 gallons of petrol, and we'll talk from there.
You get to look at it, don't you? No Taco Bell for you today, I guess.
And that's the guy right now who that's going to be is. It's like the janitor he's just going every day, just head down, doing his job like perfection. And like the CEO leaves, the next guy, like whatever, like, and they all leave and they start just passing it down to the next guy. And the last guy is like, dude, here you go. Here's the keys. And he's just every day. Okay. He's got the keys to Mapsco now. And he's going to be the Lord of Maps.
The Lord of Maps. Oh man, that would be so cool. Like 150 years in the future, it's just America's just like a wasteland. And it's just like roving bands of marauders. Like the first shot of the movie is just like some guy in armor. And he just pulls out the Mapsco. Just like
shredded.
Flip through it. It's like well fingered and just like this is the Bible. Gives it to his son. Protect this with your life.
Mad Mapsco.
And with that, the tale of Mad Mapsco is complete.